is to ask for more budget for education. What is not the, if you listen to the statistics, the cost of educating somebody in France is maybe the double that in other countries with a poorer result. That means that the traditional routine way of politicians in many geography, when they face a problem, they want to spend more money, which is at the end of the day a nightmare because you have an excessive deficit. Okay, so connectivity means how you can reconcile and think about value for money. Stakeholder relationship, I won't comment later, it's obvious in the public sector that you have to respect all communities. Materiality concept is key for us as far as we have to produce at the end of the day a concise communication. That means you have to be very selective of what you have to explain to the different stakeholders. So it's linked with conciseness. Reliability and completeness, the key question is how is your information reliable? And in the public sector, once again, I do think the integrated reporting journey could be deployed only after the deployment of a robust financial and generally agreed system of financial reporting. So the priority is definitely to reinforce the financial pillar. And I think it is my last slide. So I just wanted to give to you an overview of what is the integrated journey spirit and how this key characteristic should be adopted and adapted to the public sector in the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a very long-term perspective in my mind. Thank you for your attention.
So I'm the light relief for the afternoon. I come from a completely different community to yours, although we work with numbers. The things I'm going to be talking about are not directly related to the reporting elements. It's providing the wider context about some drivers that are happening in the public policy context, which are going to impact upon you in the sort of wider sense. And so I wanted to just talk around some of those issues, but hopefully we can have a conversation after that about what that might mean for you as finance professionals. So I'm Hitan Shah. I run the Royal Statistical Society, which is just down the road, and we're the equivalent of the ACCA for statisticians. And we, one of the things that we're grappling with is the fact that we're now living in a big data era. I mean, this term is sort of being thrown around quite liberally. You'll have heard it in the newspapers, if not in your own organizations. What does it mean? There's just a lot more data around. And to put it into context, it's hard to quantify, but in 1453, when the printing press was created, in the next 50 years, the stock of knowledge and information doubled, i.e. around 8 million books were printed in those 50 years, and in the whole of the universe before that, 8 million books had been printed. So that's how long it took to double the amount of information that was around in society. It now takes about 3 years to double the stock of information that we have, and that is rapidly increasing as well. So that just gives you a feel for the amount of information that we're seeing in society. I mean, a different example, the Sloan Digital Sky Survey in 2000, which is one of these massive astronomical cameras, telescopes, sorry, collected more data in a few weeks than had ever been collected in the lifetime of astronomy before that. So again, you know, our ability to kind of capture data is increasing and increasing. And in 2016, Chile is going to bring a new telescope on screen, and that will capture what the Sloan digital camera captured in a decade, and that will capture that in its first 5 days. So our ability to kind of capture data, process it, is just getting faster and faster and faster. And the key point is that storage costs have plummeted. So what, you know, I mean, you must find this if you go into an electrical store, you used to have to buy these big hard drives to store a relatively small amount of data, and these hard drives are now shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, but also expanding the amount of data that they can capture. Once you can capture all that data, you can look at it. You know, The spies are finding that this is quite useful to them in terms of being able to analyse who you're emailing or phoning, but we won't go into that topic today. I can do a separate lecture on that if you want. I'm just to give some examples of how some of this data is being used. And these are very everyday examples that you will have come across. Google has got a translate function, which some of you will have seen. If you put in a page of text in a language that you don't know and press to get it translated into English, it will do a fairly good job. Now, Google doesn't understand how to speak languages. It works on correlation principles. So it's because it's got such enormous data sets, it roughly knows that this word in French roughly translates to this one in English. Similarly, Amazon, when it was set up, it hired some of the best book critics in the US to provide recommendations to people as to what books they might like to buy. But at the same time, they developed an algorithm to figure out what people like you had last bought and make recommendations from that. Within a few years, they fired the critics because they just weren't selling enough books, and it was the algorithm which was selling the books. And you all know this because Amazon now knows better than you do what you like to read. And then a more kind of public sector example, New York City, which has been a real leader in using data analytics to transform public policy, was looking at buildings which were being basically overcrowded. So people were sort of taking a room and sort of dividing it up into several rooms and overcrowding it. And they used a variety of data sets to actually try and find which will be the most dangerous sites. And having used that big data analytics, their number of vacate orders went from 13% to 70%, just by trying to find out exactly what are the data indicators which might lead to some of these things. And then a final example, which some of you will have heard of, Target, which is a US store, sent some vouchers to a girl who was about 15 or 16 for pregnancy products. And her father phoned them up and said, "How dare you contact my daughter with these things? You know, are you trying to promote underage sex or whatever it is?" And then a couple of days later, the customer relationship manager from Target phoned the father back to apologise, by which time the father said, I'm very sorry, there were some things going on in my house which I didn't know about, and you were right." Now, Target has developed such good analytics that it knows that there are 4 or 5 sets of products that people tend to buy as they become pregnant, and so they knew just from what she was buying. So, I mean, if I were you, I'd rip up your Tesco Club card now, I think is the kind of point that comes from that. So, I mean, many of the examples I've given have been more private sector examples, and I think that the data does indicate that those companies that